I think that Marion Zimmer Bradley pretty much just looked at the stories of Arthur, and Marion Zimmer Bradley was a brilliant author and a strong feminist, and I think that she saw an opportunity to do this retelling and just give a different point of view. Now, she wrote another book after The Mists of Babylon, which I think, if you haven't read it, it's called Firebrand. It's a retelling of the story of Troy from Cassandra's point of view. And both those books were excellent reads. I think that as far as the evolution of Morgan Le Fay, or Morgaine, I think mostly they keep all of the interpretations stay the same, but Marion Zimmer Bradley chose to put a real new spin on it, and that's really what made The Mists of Babylon such an interesting departure from the traditional Arthurian myths, and I think encouraged some other people to test out the waters in doing something a little different too. If you watch the film Excalibur, they make Morgan Le Fay and Morgause the same person. They just merge the two. You know, in this book, they make Morgause Arthur's aunt instead of his half-sister, and make Morgaine the mother of Mordred. But in the original stories, Morgause is the mother of Mordred and his half-sister, and also the mother of the other four knights.
Is Morgan seen as this kind of bad guy the entire story, or does he become a bad guy because of him?
Mordred is he's always a schemer. He's always looking for his opportunities. More and more as the book continues, you see Mordred really aspiring for power, and a lot of it is because he becomes aware of his parentage and knows that he really is Arthur's blood son.
So he wasn't reared with that awareness.
I think that there's some implication of it, but in some tellings he knows from the beginning, and some tellings he learns later who he is. Usually, in most tellings, he knows of his heritage, and that's what leads him to go to Arthur's court. And Arthur takes him in because he reveals his heritage to Arthur, and Arthur is sort of forced to acknowledge, okay, well, this is my son. Anyone else?
What does Lily come in
Well, in the original tales, Vivian really doesn't have a place. If you want to give her a place, then call her the Lady of the Lake. And that is probably the closest approximation you can get to the character of Vivian in Arthurian legends. Yes?
In the movie Merlin, have you seen that?
Which one?
Well, it's just...
There was a mini-series with Sam Neill called Merlin, or?
It's not a mini-series,
It had,
it's just a movie.
It had the guy that plays Mr. Smith in The Matrix as Merlin, I do believe.
I don't remember.
Helen Bonham Carter played Morgan. And
Okay, so that was Sam Neill that played it. That was the Sam Neill version. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
In that, they have a woman called Queen Mab, who's the head of
The evil fairies, right?
yeah.
That was an invention for that movie.
So it's
Well, I mean,
like
Mab was an invention for Mab was a Celtic myth, but they just borrowed her for that movie.
But there is a myth of that
Yeah.
person.
Yes,
Well,
but
she's
she has
the
nothing to do with Arthurian legend traditionally. It has nothing to do with Arthurian legend.
Yeah. So apologies from the group, because I know we staggered in at different moments over quite a stretch of time. For those of us who weren't here at the beginning, can you share with us how you got interested in this and what you do with it in your own life and why you're interested in it?
Okay, well, yeah, I did actually talk about it at the beginning, but I will reiterate. When I was little, I had a lot of really interesting bedtime stories that my mother chose for me. Dante's Inferno was one. Beowulf was another. But Beowulf was the one that really captured my attention first. The only problem is that when my mother would read bedtime stories, she'd read herself to sleep, and then I would be left wondering how the story ended. So I would take the book and finish it. So that was probably the first book I read was Beowulf when I was 3 or 4. And that idea of these like really amazing epic battles and warriors who were beyond human just like captured my imagination. And then I discovered the stories of Arthur, and here's like this whole kingdom full of people that could do that, a king who could like single-handedly kill 940 men in a fight. And so I couldn't even tell you how old I was when I read my first story of Arthur, but I know that I read pretty voraciously through my adolescence, my teen years, and into my 20s, everything that I could lay hands on. Not just about Arthur, but about any kind of myth or legendary figures.
Including the whole Mahabharata.
What's that?
Including the whole Mahabharata.
I read the Mahabharata. I put my own interpretation of the Mahabharata. I did a lecture here, when did I do that? About 20 years ago. I did a lecture here on the Mahabharata. So it sort of comes full circle. But so my fascination with legendary figures in general stemmed from that early, I would completely attribute it to those early readings of Beowulf, and then on through the rest. And probably why I got so into Highlander when it came out.
So have you read The Palace of Illusions, the feminist reinterpretation of the Mahabharata?
No.
I haven't. My mom just showed it to me last night, so I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him a copy of it.
My turn on the Mahabharata was a kind of another look at Karna from the stories of Mahabharata, but I am definitely keen to see how they portray Draupadi in this one.
So if you like it, will you come back and talk to us about it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You bet. Have some good ideas of how the initial stages of battle would go. But yeah, they were pretty much very short, brutal affairs, and there'd be a lot of hacking and wiggling and limbs all over the place, but not it wouldn't last very long. And pretty much it'd be okay. How many people are left? What else? So, anyway, so with I don't know what you have for use with an Arthurian interpretation, but if you would consider, even if you want to do a one-handed sword, you have the long swords that would traditionally use sword and shield. You just use your front finger and your thumb as your tight grip, and hold a really tight grip with that, and then use your bottom fingers for flexibility.
Our shields appropriate for our performance.
Every interpretation can be whatever you want it to be. That's the nice thing about Arthur. You can make it, make it your own, however you want it to be. Sword and shield, that's been used as an interpretation of Arthur. If you look at the Merlin series, a lot of sword and shield fighting. Monty Python. Well, Monty Python had both, right? Arthur used a sword and shield. Everyone else just used a two-handed sword. And
Hey, move your hair.
It's just a flesh wound.
just a flesh wound. Come back, I'll bite your legs off.
I had no idea those characters were, I just saw Monty Python was being funny, but they really were based on different attributes of the knights.
Yeah, Lancelot, Galahad, Bedivere. The only one that was an invention by Monty Python was Sir Robin.
Of course.
What's the deal with like huge swords? Pretty much in any movie that takes place in medieval England, usually the king has the really big sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those big fat swords were basically because people wore armor, and it's really hard to cut armor.
Yeah.
So a lot of the damage that was done during those battles was really done by just bludgeoning in someone's armor and killing them through bludgeoning. So you pretty much take this big fat sword and you just beat them to death with it. And you don't really cut anybody.
Well, don't you need someone who's incredibly strong to use it?
Yeah. I mean, well, like I said, I mean, you take a couple of big hefty swings and then take a break.
How come the king always had to use sort of lots of?
Oh, everybody would. Everybody would have big swords at the time because they figured. I mean, it was all about just, you know. I mean, these guys would just like swing swords all, you know, during the day for practice until they could just swing it a lot.
Yeah.
And the school of thought at the time was just swing it harder and faster than anyone else. There wasn't a lot of finesse to sword play in the 5th century. That came along much later when lighter swords came around.
Was there any paladinity at that era? Oh, maybe Christianity's not that be.
Well, yeah, I mean, Christianity doesn't do a lot of, well, at the time didn't do a lot of nods to powerful women, but obviously, you know, throughout Britain, you've got stories of powerful women. You've got Bochia of the Celts. You've got you know, later on, you know, Mary Queen of Scots, but that obviously is much later. But they're there if you look for them. You know, you talk about Queen Mab. Well, she's a Celtic myth also, and a very powerful figure, albeit kind of an evil figure. Although, I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, she's more considered an elemental figure. She's wild and whimsical and very much driven by her own whims at the time, whatever she feels like doing. And but it just tends to be kind of dark because she's one of the Sidhe, and the Sidhe are really mischievous and have their own agenda, and no one really knows what that is.